Hey, Survivor. Welcome to the Vibrant Survivor podcast. I am so excited about today's episode. Today's guest is Dr. Regina Ragasa, who is a physician who is triple board certified in family, lifestyle, and obesity medicine. She is the founder of Cali Wellness Direct Primary Care, where she provides personalized preventative care with a focus on extending health span so patients can live life to the fullest. And I recently had the opportunity to hear Dr. Ragasa speak at the Power of the Plate conference in San Diego. Amazing. Her keynote on the humble plate was one of the most talked about keynotes at the event. Not even kidding. I saw the polls too. And one of the things that stood out to me was her emphasis on human connection. She talked about imperfect progress and helping people to bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually being able to do it. Dr. Regasa, welcome to the Vibrant Survivor.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm super stoked to be here. I mean, first of all, I just enjoy your energy and meeting you. So the fact that I get to interact with you more than just once this year is amazing to me.
Right? It's like, oh, me too. I feel the same way. So tell us your story. Like, what led you into lifestyle medicine and obesity medicine?
That's really great questions. The beginnings of me. Honestly, I had no idea that this was my route. I was trained as an osteopathic physician, and being trained in that type of medicine, we see the human as a whole being. It's not, just your arm is being bothered right now. It has nothing to do with the rest of your body, because we all know that when your arm or your back hurt, it really affects your whole person, right? And that everything really interacts with each other. So I think it was funny because I was just excited to just get into medicine in general. I was like, whether it's an MD or DO, I really don't care. I just want to practice medicine. But I feel like certain things happen in the universe for certain purposes. And, going through training, I got trained in family medicine. And so basically, I treat kids from ages 0 all the way to 99. And, after finishing my residency in family medicine, I started practicing as a full-fledged doc. And 2 years in, I was just like, why did I go into medicine? I just feel like a drug dealer. I am constantly just doling out medications. My patients who are doing quote unquote well are stable on the medications, but oftentimes, unfortunately, over time, they tend to get worse. So I was adding more medications to get them more stable. And again, I just questioned my route. And I was like, I was, oh my God, 11 years of education for 2 years and questioning my identity. And I was really lucky that one day a colleague of mine gave a talk on lifestyle medicine. Essentially, he was showing the evidence behind lifestyle, using the research behind nutrition, sleep, exercise, relationships, all the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine to help prevent, treat, and even reverse chronic disease. And when I heard that, I was like, excuse me? That sounds like voodoo. That can't be right. We never learned about that in medical school. But of course, I got really curious and down the rabbit hole I went and never came out. And it's been a huge game changer for me because now, I think most patients, of course, they want to feel better and they want to be given the tools. Oftentimes, when you're like, oh, your sugars are a little high, we might want to start you on medications. Almost every single person's like, give me a chance, doc. I want to do better. Give me a chance to eat better, to exercise, to do what I need to do to not take medications. And now that I was equipped with that information to help the patient, it was actually possible. So I was starting to see patients not only prevent disease, but even reverse disease. So people with diabetes coming off of their insulin, coming off of their pills for diabetes. It was just finally I felt like a doctor, who was actually helping people to heal. So that was kind of the start of lifestyle medicine for me. I became very, very passionate about this and started giving talks to my colleagues because I was like, everybody needs to know this because everybody needs to get better. And then one thing led to another. And unfortunately, in the United States, we have this kind of epidemic going on of weight gain, and a lot of people are struggling with this. And so I found myself kind of interested in the weight loss realm because food is so powerful over there. And I thought that, a combination of the pills or medications in general to help jumpstart people, and then adding the lifestyle in, which is the cornerstone to really getting you to where you need to be, was the perfect combination. So when the opportunity came, I threw my name in the hat to become the chief of obesity medicine, and somehow I got chosen, and the rest is history. So
Wow. And was there a moment in your career, either personally or professionally, where you realized that, just having the knowledge, having that information alone wasn't enough to help people to make changes?
100%. It's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to apply it, right? Even my own personal life, when I learned about this, I thought, there's no way I'm going to take chicken out of my diet. I'm half Filipino. Like, pork is a huge part of our culture. At least I thought that was it. And so, learning about how whole food plant-based eating is so healthful, for some reason, growing up in the United States, that really made me question whether or not I was turning my back on my culture. So I had to do a little heart to heart with my father because I was like, Dad, I really believe in this and I think this is the way of the future, but I don't really want to give up my cultural aspects. And so I decided to ask him, Hey, Dad, what did you eat growing up? Because I feel like there's some disconnect here. And he said, girl, we grew up really poor. We did not have money. Your grandfather, he drove a jeepney, which is essentially a bus in the Philippines, and he, made pennies essentially. And to feed a family of four, it meant they were eating mung beans and rice and vegetables on the daily. And he described it as being Good Friday, every day of the year. And it was only twice a month that his father would get paid and they would be able to afford meat. So meat was a real rare and special occasion, for them to have and celebrate with. And so that really reframed my understanding of the Filipino culture. And it helped me re-embrace it. I was like, wait, so eating a whole food plant-based diet is actually embracing my cultural heritage. And when I was able to make that connection, I felt much more comfortable with making this decision because I wasn't, disowning my cultural heritage, which is really important to me. So once I kind of came to that revelation, I started trying to make that connection for other people of other cultures and backgrounds so that they, again, don't feel like they're losing their identity and taking on something new. Rather, again, just re embracing what our ancestors have already been doing for centuries.
Wow, that's so good. And it's so key too, because there are cultural considerations in trauma healing.
Yes.
And there are also certain factors that may come into play in terms of, say, betrayal trauma, where those kinds of things need to be navigated as well. And
Hmm.
so it's so good that you're raising that conversation, raising that topic for discussion with your patients and educating others as well, other physicians as well as other people.
Hmm. Hmm.
A lot of survivors know what they should do,
Hmm.
but and they know what they should be doing for their health, but it can be a struggle to follow through. When you're dysregulated, when you're just ruminating or just feeling like, eating your feelings. I mean, I've been there
Hmm.
and on the healing journey. So why is knowledge often not enough to change that behavior pattern?
I think it's not enough because, again, it all comes down to that human connection. The motivation for us to do anything is usually for somebody in our lives. And unfortunately, I see this a lot. And I think the people that you talk to in your life and your followers for the Vibrant Survivor might be more female. And I think in the female population, we have this tendency to be the mamas to the world, which means we are last to take care of ourselves. And yes, Same. And I'm really, really grateful for the people in my life who do help me in all the different aspects. And it truly takes a village, right?
Yes.
Um, but we have to be able to recognize that first, right? And I think we have to remind ourselves that in order for us to do our job for everybody else so that they can be well, we need to be well. Because if we're not well, now the people who depend on us have to take care of us. And I think, part of that is just the acknowledgement first, right? And anyone kind of going through trauma or has been through the trauma and hasn't actually processed it, we sweep it under the rug.
Mm.
And, there's the book, The Body Keeps the Score, right?
Yes, love that.
And it's keeping score. And it comes up in different ways if we don't actually process it. And it's not going to be easy. We all know that. It's a journey, it's a sharing, it's that human connection and being able to be vulnerable and being honest with ourselves, which can be the hardest thing to do, right?
Yeah,
And also just um, being forgiving of yourself, right?
that's one
Uh,
of the hardest things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm, you raised your hand earlier. I raised my hand earlier. I am not perfect. um, but we can always strive to be a little bit better. We're not aiming for 100% today. We're striving for one step forward. And if we keep doing that every day, every couple days, that accumulates, right? We're not starting from square one again. We've already made those 5 steps forward and we're that much closer to healing, to achieving the goals that we are looking for. So I think it's having the grace to forgive yourself for those moments where you're not where you want to be, but also acknowledging the journey you've already taken because so many of us forget that. And, oftentimes I like to tell my patients, look back to yourself 6 months ago, a year ago, show them where you are now, because that person's going to be really proud of you. They might be in disbelief, they might be in disbelief actually.
Right? That's
Yeah.
so good. It's so important to celebrate your wins.
Yeah.
And so why or how do trauma and chronic stress affect our ability to make healthy choices or even healthier choices?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. Because of the trauma, we tend to have higher cortisol levels, right? We're in that fight or flight mode, right? And when we're in that position, it's really hard to make good decisions. So, this is when the mindfulness comes in and reassuring yourself that you are in a safe place. Because when you are in that safe place, now the mind is calm, the fog is gone, and you can make that better decision for yourself. Again, not easy, but
It's
every time you do it, you get better. The fog clears up a little bit more, right?
mm-hmm.
And you heard this in my lecture earlier. I still stumble from time to time. And again, just having that grace to be like,
Right.
it's okay. Tomorrow I'm going to make a better decision. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's tough to heal and you're gonna keep stumbling because we kind of relive that and our body kind of reminds us, hey, no, we're in a stressful mode, and you have to tell yourself, nope, we are okay. We're in a safe place now. So it's a lot of mindfulness, I think.
I love that. And why is food such a draw for comfort?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's immediate satisfaction, right? Eating your feelings, oh my God, it feels so good in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that first bite is the best bite. And interestingly enough, you try to find that bite or that like deliciousness that you had in that first bite again and again and again, even within that session. And sometimes that bag of chips or that tub of ice cream, you're looking for that satisfaction and you're like, sometimes you can't find it. And next thing you know, you're at the bottom of the barrel already, right? And you're like, oh man, I can't believe I just ate that entire pint or 2 pint ice cream or bag of chips.
The whole bag.
Yeah, girl, that has happened multiple times to me. I'm the salty, crunchy person.
Okay. I have the sweet tooth, but
Ooh, okay.
and I love that you shared that during your keynote. I mean, it doesn't get more human than that. Like the doctor giving the keynote, sharing, "Hey, look, I actually just jammed on a bag of chips on my way home or whatever, and then hit it."
Yeah,
Like I think it's so important for us to be able to share and connect that way with one another, because the
yeah,
struggle is real regardless of the nature of your relationship, or where you are, or what has happened to you or is currently happening to you.
right.
And I just love that you shared that. Walk me through your LIVEN method. You talked about that at the conference, but talk about that.
Yeah. So, as and your listeners don't know this, but I was kind of like a last minute speaker that was added to the list, and I'm grateful that they reached out to me. And
Don't get it twisted, Survivor. She did amazing. She walked up there with her custom made dress and vibrant color and I mean, just owned it. I'm just saying. Go
thank you.
ahead.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and so I came up with, I was going back and forth with Scott Stoll about like what topics should be covered. And deep down inside of me, we had settled on a topic on women's health. But deep down inside, I was like, I think there's something more. I think there's something else, and I don't know what it is. But there's this disconnect between what you said, knowledge, and actually doing it. And so at the Plant Nutrition Conference, we talk about how food can be healing, and we talk about all the science behind why it is anti-inflammatory, why it's the optimal diet, why we should all be aiming this way. And I can talk my patients until I am blue in the face about why this is important for them to do. But in the end, if they don't have that why, they will not make that leap over, right? And I can give them all the resources too. I can give them all the websites and all these different, recipes for how to make delicious food. But again, there's this missing connection that all of us struggle with because, if you're going to put it out there very plainly, my message is eat more plant-based. But when you say that, it can sound very aggressive, and they're like, "Ah, that's weird." So as I was thinking about my career and how I have very short appointment visits, how am I able to actually convince my patients? At first, I couldn't. I'll be very honest. It took a lot of trial and error, but through that trial and error, I started kind of dissecting how I'm able to connect with these patients to make that bridge between the knowledge and actually applying it. And in the end, I was like, oh, the missing piece is actually human connection, right? The vulnerability between the patient showing me what they are concerned about, their fears, and then for me to kind of reciprocate that and be like, yeah, I feel your fears and your concerns. And I had those too. And look how we can overcome this together. Maybe not tomorrow, but we can do this step by step. So long story short, I came up with an acronym called the LIVEN Method, which kind of walks clinicians through a method of how to build that human connection between, um, you know, where we want to go to and from where we are, right? So that bridge again. So LIVEN, it stands for listening. I is for imperfection. V is for validation. E is for empowerment, and N is for normalization. So, do you want me to go through all of this? I'll try to make it really quick. It was it was a 45-minute lecture, so we're going to try to shorten this into 5 minutes. But for L is for listening, right? Obviously, I want you to hear the other person's side of the story. Again, what are their struggles? What are their fears? What are their concerns? Get everything off of their chest. And it sounds scary for a clinician to receive all of that because again, a lot of us are on the clock. We got 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, and then
Good.
we got to get on to the next. Exactly, right? I don't have all day to listen to your story. But that story can come out pretty quickly. Honestly. And then when you fully listen to them without necessarily looking at the clock all the time, they feel like everything's off their chest. So now they're able to, now that they've given their side of the story, now they can welcome your side of the story and what you have to tell them. So that's the listening part. In
Hmm.
terms of the imperfection, I shared the example of me not being perfect in my own journey and how I still stumble today, even though I've been 7 years plant-based. And my stumbling is not necessarily eating animal products. My stumbling is more in the processed food realm.
Yes,
But
I can
this,
relate.
yeah, I mean, listen, today's the day and age to be a vegan, okay? We all get to indulge.
Right?
Um, but that can be and just kind of sharing your own imperfections and that you are going to hit those stressful moments in your life where you can't think clearly and you're reaching for the comfort food. You want to eat your feelings a little bit, right?
Hmm.
But when you do eat those feelings, because they're going to happen, just make sure that the next time, or not the next time, the next day, we're not stuck in that mode. We're moving on, right? It's just like your kid learning to walk. If they trip and fall, you're not going to be like, oh, don't ever walk again. You're going to have them keep trying, right? And we just get better and better each time. So
Hmm.
that's the I is the imperfection. And the imperfection is you as the clinician sharing your own imperfections that makes you vulnerable, right?
Ooh,
Vulnerability, big, big,
when does
big.
that happen?
Oh, I think it's missing, right? We need more of that. Like a lot of clinicians kind of put themselves on a pedestal. You got to be perfect. And we're not. We're not. But
Yeah, or
being,
even have a God complex. I mean, let's be honest.
that's true. Yes.
And
um,
you put that with a time crunch and it's like a bad movie.
ooh, girl. Man, you just summed it up. You did. But I think that's what makes the relationship so real, right? It's a back and forth and that vulnerability. So I is kind of the imperfection vulnerability part piece of it.
Hmm.
V is for validation. People come into my weight loss clinic not knowing what not to do and not never trying anything. They've tried everything, in fact, that they know of. So when they share their story, you hear about how they went keto, how they exercise 2 hours every single day without fail. And you, as a clinician, need to acknowledge that. You need to acknowledge that they are trying and that they even though they've tried all these things, they feel disappointed by it. And so for you to validate those trials and errors means you've heard them. So it's kind of going back to the first letter again. I've heard you. I'm listening to you. I understand where you're coming from. And I see that you're trying hard. And when you guys get on the same page, because a lot of times, unfortunately, like what you said, there's that God complex coming in. The patient comes in, the doctor might be like, well, you're supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, and that's why you're not the way you are. And it's like, well, of course, I tried that, but it didn't work.
Hmm.
And so when there's that disconnect and you don't acknowledge that they've tried or you've already determined that they are a failure,
Hmm.
that just ruins that relationship and the doors are shut and there's going to be no moving forward. So I think we need to acknowledge and also be honest about ourselves, right? I do have some patients, it's pretty rare. I do have some patients who have not tried, but they're just struggling to even make that first step in the first place. But it's just kind of, you know, listening to them so that you can validate what they've tried. So validation, super important. E is form empowerment. Empowerment is not what you think, right?
It
It's
sounds
not
good.
like, yeah, it did. Yeah, yeah. Like sometimes when you hear empowerment, they're like, oh, give them tools to do better and this and that.
Mhm.
And yes, that is part of it. But empowerment is showing them that they are already capable of doing hard things,
Mm.
right? And changing your diet, facing the fear of the trauma that you went through.
Mhm.
These are really hard things that people don't want to tackle. Or maybe they do, but they don't know how. It sounds scary, right?
Mhm.
And so the empowerment piece of it is that to realize that we are already strong and we do hard things every day already, right? A lot of us hold a job. We tend to work 5 days a week, give or take. And whether or not you love your job, you will show up in the morning, even if you're feeling tired, right? Because the
Mhm.
whole team depends on you,
Mhm.
because you need to, make money to pay for the roof over your head, for the food on your table, right?
Right.
So you are already doing hard things that you don't want to do every day. And by pointing that out, and I don't expect patients to be 100% plant-based. If they are, more power to them. But if I can get A's and B's 80, 90% of the time, we're winning. We're winning. So I tell them, just like your job, you don't
Mhm.
work well, some people do, but mm, ideally we're working about like 5 days a week, and we have some days for rest. And if we can be plant-based Monday through Friday, just like that 9 to 5 job, then we are winning. We are investing in our personal health, just like how you work your job, you're investing in your financial health. So, pointing out that they already do hard things and they are capable of doing something else that is hard is empowerment, at least in my eyes. So, that's E. And then N is probably my favorite, which is normalization. This goes back to, again, the story of how I ended up making my own changes in because when we hear plant-based, we tend to think that this is an elitist type of diet or way of living, and maybe only reserved for the privileged.
Mhm. Or
But
expensive, unaffordable,
expensive, absolute.
inaccessible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not saying that it's easy to do everywhere, right? There are food deserts. I completely understand that. And it's learning
Absolutely.
how to work within that system.
Mhm.
But the normalization piece of it too is a cultural identity issue. Um, Again, when I learned about going plant-based, I felt like, oh, this is an American diet. This is not Filipino. I'm also half Thai, so I didn't really identify that. And I was just like, I don't feel that connection. I don't feel like this is normal for a Thai or a Filipino person to eat this way. But again, digging deeper and just looking back, not even that far back, right? I can even go back to my father, and when he was young. Luckily, he can still recall that to tell me about that stuff.
Mhm.
That it was actually very normal to eat a plant-based diet. It wasn't necessarily seen as like a diet that they were proud of because it was the people who didn't have that much money that lived this way. But interestingly enough, these people ended up living very long, healthy lives as well, right?
Mhm.
And so making that cultural connection, is super helpful because then you're normalizing it. You're saying eating plant-based is actually normal for your culture. In fact, that's what we've been doing for, decades and centuries. And so I'm just going to draw on, the Mexican population. I live in LA, so the patients that I treat we have a lot of Latinos here. And so I always say, hey, imagine your bisabuela from just like 100 years ago. Imagine she's living on a small little farm. Maybe she got 10 chickens running around. You think she's killing a chicken every day to put on her plate? And oftentimes they're like, no, she's going to run out of food in 10 days, right? And I'm like, exactly. What is she eating? And they're like, beans, like without even like, skipping a beat. And I'm like, exactly, beans, rice, tortillas. This is what they're eating, lots of vegetables. And I'm like, well, maybe that grandma would kill that chicken, maybe in like 6 months because she hasn't seen her brother in a while and he's visiting. So it's like we're celebrating the presence of her brother.
Mhm.
Or I bring up the example of like birria, which is it's like a beef dish, typically in the Mexican culture, used for special occasions
Mm.
like quinceañeras, like a sweet 16,
Mhm.
or weddings. So, when we used animal products, it was like a form of celebration. So when I point that out to my patients, they're like, yeah, you're right. Those things used to be special to us, and now we have it every day, right? And that takes away that special dish. That dish is now losing meaning when we have it every single day. Another example I thought about recently was kind of like, going back to the whole work day thing, obviously we would love to go to Disneyland or Disney World every day, but we're not going to play hooky every day to go to Disneyland or Disney World. Again, you would lose the specialness of it, right?
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be so wonderful anymore. So it's about when you do these things, if you decide to keep animal products in your diet, that we respect that food and we reserve it for those special occasions and we don't take it for granted. Because unfortunately, that's what we've done in the United States. And it's just led to more of the inflammation in our body, leading to a lot of the chronic diseases that we've had. And studies have shown time and time again that when we eliminate the animal products and keep them to a minimum, that's when we are our healthiest. And of course, we're trying to avoid processed foods as well during this whole thing. So
Mhm.
that was not 5 minutes. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. And now we have to navigate ultra processed foods
Oh,
in the
girl.
aisles at the grocery store. And I
Yeah.
talk a lot on the podcast about, really shopping the perimeter of the store. And but there, I think you bring up a great point about, and you did in your keynote about cultural considerations and the role that has in that connection to identity, where you come from. That's part of the know who you are,
Hmm.
that I talk about on the podcast, and it's so important to incorporate all of these things, so that we can come to understand, like, okay, like we're not that far removed from whole food, even plant-based eating
Right.
culturally, like across the board.
Absolutely.
But we've been bombarded with a lot of marketing messages and a lot of temptation on the shelves at the store
Right.
level, and it really makes it hard. And you throw in, like, the emotional piece and all
Mm.
of that, and it's just
Hmm.
like, it's kind of a recipe for health disaster.
Yeah.
um what how does feeling seen and heard, uh, given your Liven method, how does that impact healing?
Mm. I mean, everybody wants to be seen and heard, right? And so when you reflect and you kind of, you've heard what the patient has to say and you acknowledge it, by doing that, it opens this relationship between you. Because if you are seen and heard by that other person, now there's a trust between you. And without trust, why should we ever move anything forward? Right? That's a huge piece of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll hear it sometimes actually, I heard it the other day walking to work, and I heard this patient going, I'm going to go into the doctor's office and I'm going to tell him I'm not taking that medication. I'm just not going to. And I was like, I get it, but I feel like there's going to be a fight between them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not to say that fighting is not okay. It is, but we need to get on the same page so that we can
Mm-hmm.
resolve this conflict and move forward together.
Mm-hmm.
So that being seen and heard is so important to any relationship. Otherwise, you just feel dismissed and that nobody's listening to you.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. And one of the other, along with your Liven method, you also talked about, shared a lot about cultural roots, your own, and the patients that you work with every day. You also talked about the humble plate. So, what inspired the concept of the humble plate?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it, and the humble plate represents humble people, which is the everyday person, right? Um, I mean, I think it's a little bit different now because we're just all trying to live the luxurious life. But if we take it back a couple decades, I like to think of people as the everyday person.
Mm-hmm.
And the everyday person doesn't live in luxury every day. And they are humble. And the plate that I am promoting and asking people to eat is quite humble itself. These foods are not necessarily like seen as celebratory foods, right? These foods are seen as everyday foods that sustains our health, and keeps us working our best. So it's interesting because like I like to categorize foods as everyday foods versus
Mm-hmm.
celebratory foods. Some people like to call celebratory foods cheat foods, but I don't like that because it gives it a very negative connotation and you did something bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Like,
But yeah, yeah, exactly. Finger pointing, right?
the
No, wagging your finger.
self-blaming and shaming
No.
is real.
Yes. I actually was going to mention shame earlier, but yes, all of that is real. And who's our worst critic? We are.
Yep.
And it's from again trauma. When we were kids, we learned it, right? Somebody told us we did something bad, and now we when we do that again, we tell ourselves that we did something bad,
Mhm.
right? Not even consciously, it's subconscious. And so, you know, when we think about the celebratory versus everyday foods, the
Mhm.
everyday foods, they're not the luxurious things. It's not having a birthday cake every single day. It's just the rice, the beans, the veggies. They don't shout out much other than like it's, very simple and beautiful in its color. And it's a celebration in itself, but not necessarily, luxurious. And so that's how I like to separate the two in terms of being like humble foods that are kind of unassuming, maybe. I don't really know how to describe it. But I felt like that just kind of um, basically brought everything all together. When I
Mhm.
just said the humble plate, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm trying to describe is it's not like this fancy food that you're eating every day. And I think we
Mhm.
kind of live in this culture, especially with social media, like food porn is like huge thing, like we just love just kind of like tantalizing the eyes and the taste buds with like all this fancy stuff, and we should be having this all the time. And it's like, no, we don't want to do that all the time, because people who did that all the time back in the day, those are the people who had the heart attacks, the strokes, and all those other things, and that's what we want to avoid. Yet the
Mhm.
people who had that from time to time only during celebrations, those were the people who had the longer, healthier lives. So it's a very humble life that you live with these humble foods.
Yeah, there's so much out there as far as you talked about social media, the luxurious life, the soft life. I mean, and with the processed, ultra processed foods or excessive amounts of like meats and things like that, it's like yeah, we're gonna be living the soft life, but in a way that we probably don't want to.
No, 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 no. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's how can how can people live and eat more healthfully without feeling like they're abandoning their culture, or say if there's some cultural betrayal or betrayal
Mm.
trauma that's there that's maybe culturally related, how can people eat more healthfully and navigate those things?
I would say be curious about
Hmm.
your culture. I thought I knew the Thai and Filipino culture really well, but upon exploring it more, and being kind of open to learning more and not thinking that I'm a know-it-all, that ability to have that growth mindset is really, really helpful. And just being curious, um,
Love that.
and asking, right? Because like people are always happy to share stories. So talk to your elders about it. What did you eat when you were growing up, Or
Hmm.
what did people around you eat if you happen to have come from a wealthier family, right? I'm still trying to find a way to get to connect with wealthier people. I'm actually quite bad at that. They're like, "Oh, I lived on a ranch and we always had meat." And I'm like, "Cool. Okay. We're gonna find a different angle." But yeah,
And
but just being curious.
And what if people have like traumatic memories or triggers
Mm.
around their culture or around their heritage, or like something has happened to them or is
Mhm.
happening, or the environment, or the way that those kinds of say gatherings like family gatherings or things like that, where maybe there's some triggers, or there's some challenges there. um, what's what are some ways to be able to navigate that, or maybe even work around that, to be
Mhm.
able to tap into this idea of connecting with your ancestry, connecting with your cultural heritage, and being able to eat and live healthfully?
Mhm. I think that's a great question because I think you have to know yourself best, right?
Hmm.
When you're going on this journey, if you're trying to go more plant-based, you kind of have to define who you are in this. And when I first started tackling the journey myself, I'll be very honest, I only wanted to be about 80% plant-based, and I wanted to be able to indulge in whatever foods I wanted on the weekends. You
Hmm.
know, cheese and eggs were my weakness. And so when I
Hmm.
told my husband about my idea, he told me, he was like, okay, I support you on going more plant-based, but you said you want to be 80, 90%, and I cannot do that. And I was like, what do you mean? I need to be 100% plant-based. And I was like, excuse me? Because I hear the opposite usually with partners. Um, but he was very honest with himself. He knew that if I gave him chicken or whatever else over the weekend, he would want to try to find that taste throughout the week. So navigating that can be very tricky when you said like gatherings and things like that. So first of all, be honest with yourself. If you think that you can draw that line in the sand where, you know, you're able to cross it only on the weekends, only in celebrations, and it won't bleed into your daily routine, I think it's okay. But if you're kind of like my husband who just cannot cross it whatsoever, then you just have to prepare for going to those events, you know, which means maybe eating before you go, which means maybe bringing your own dish to share with everybody else. And it's very interesting because I'm sure you've experienced this too when you go to parties and you bring your own dish and you brought a good amount. And then when you go, the food's already gone. You're like, oh man, I should have scooped it up for myself first, and now I don't have enough food. So a lot of the times, these foods that you bring to these parties can be conversation openers. They can help other people understand that this food is can be delicious, and so I think you're bringing more health to the table.
Hmm.
um, but I understand it's hard. You know, going to the Filipino parties was really, really tough for me. Oftentimes I would go and they're like, "Oh, gee," that's what they call me. "Gee, you should come eat." And I said, "Oh, no, thank you, Tita. No, thank you, Auntie. I don't eat meat anymore." And they're like, "Yeah, but there's the chicken there. You can eat that." And I was just like, "Oh, I don't eat chicken either. Oh, but there's fish." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't eat that either. Basically anything with eyeballs." And, you know, it gets a little tiring to say that over and over again at parties, but eventually they understand. And some of my relatives have been so kind that they purposely make plant-based meals now to bring to a potluck to have everyone included, which I really, really appreciate. So it can be rough in the beginning,
Hmm.
but the more and more you practice it, the easier and easier it gets.
Hmm. That's so true. I also think that things like, travel when and if you're able
Mm,
is a
mhm,
great way to make cultural connections.
mhm.
And I think even simple things like locally where you are, starting where you are
Yeah,
and maybe tying in with community
yeah.
events like potlucks or
Mhm.
things like that, or going to culturally specific restaurants. We love doing that. We love Ethiopian food and love, gathering around with our family around that, and because
Yeah,
it's already like shared food,
yeah.
and so a chance to kind of, touch a little bit of African heritage. And those are some ways that we try to connect and also expose our kids, because we don't have a
Mm,
lot of family nearby where we are. And
yeah.
but and certainly I know some people who they have a hard time even going to family gatherings because there's tension, there's traumatic memories, there's triggers
Mm,
involved
mm,
around those interpersonal dynamics. And
mhm,
so
mhm, mhm,
but I know that there's healing power in community.
mhm,
And so, finding other ways to tie in with community, I think is really important. And it's a way to
mm.
be able to do both, yes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to experience the healing power of community and around shared meal, but also be able to tap into cultural heritage as well, even if you
yeah,
can't like hang with your own people.
yeah. I love that. I never thought about it that way. I thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna start using that now.
So
I
for
always learning something new from everyone I talk to. I love that part.
well, and I think, but you have been highlighting the importance of human connection, and I just think it permeates our lives in all ways, always.
Hmm.
So for somebody who, I know for survivors, it's so easy to get overwhelmed easily with making lifestyle changes, dietary changes, whether it's, moving, eating, incorporating healthier habits. For somebody who's feeling overwhelmed, what's one imperfect step that they can take even this week?
Yeah, I love that. You know, as I was kind of helping some people, especially like the doubters, they're like, no way, that could never. I always like to start with, or even people who are like, I hate vegetables. I always start with, well, there must be something you like. And kind of going through that list with them. And they're like, oh, you know what? I actually really like strawberries or I really like eating potatoes. And I'm like, oh, did you know that that's okay on my list? You can eat potatoes. And a lot of their jaws will just drop to the ground. They're like, no way, that can't be right. I'm like, yeah, if you love those things, those are vegetables that grew from the ground or they're fruit, anything that grew from the ground is fair game. If we can just start incorporating that just one time that day, whether it's a sweet potato as a snack, or if you're incorporating some vegetable as your starch part of your meal, start there, you know. And as that becomes easier, let's start increasing maybe more of the veggies that you like. Maybe you enjoy, I don't know, spinach. Or maybe you like broccoli and you don't like it mushy, so you just prepare it just right for yourself. And so small baby steps. And once it becomes a little more comfortable, then go ahead and challenge yourself more because this is all about self-improvement, right? We don't want to be stuck where we are. And life is always evolving anyway. It's always changing. So why not better yourself in that movement of change rather than moving in the opposite direction?
I love that progress. What's an example of a humble plate in your house? What's your humble
Oh,
pl- what's on your humble plate?
okay. Our humble plate. Oh man, we've been going through a lot. Mostly because I've been in a funk with food. I'll be very honest with you. I just
Hey,
have
that's real.
I have so much going on right now. I'm opening my own clinic. I am very excited to talk to you. I have some other like speaking engagements. So a lot has been changing for me. And so I feel like I'm a little overloaded mentally. So I don't have time to think about food. But a typical humble plate for me, my family loves tofu. Like my kids are tofu fiends. They could literally eat it out of the container plain. Um, I'm not as good as them at doing that. But I think a go-to for us that I really enjoy and is quite humble is just steamed rice. And it's even white rice. I don't even do brown. Um, Especially if I'm feeling a little more indulgent. I'll do the white rice as the base. And then I'll throw on some steamed broccoli, freshly shredded carrots, and then I'll do air fried tofu and then put peanut sauce on there. And
Mm,
that is
yum.
major, yes, exactly. Yum. Everybody in the family eats it. I do have to make two different sauces though. My kids are 4 and 7. So
Okay.
the sauce for the grown-ups have a lot of garlic, fresh garlic. So it's a
I
little
love
spicy
it.
for the kids. So I leave the garlic out for them and everybody's happy. So I love that plate. It's very easy. You can batch cook it and then you've got that delicious meal for, 2, 3 days.
I love that. That's so good. And I'm all about batch cooking.
Yeah.
Uh, what what do you wish that every survivor understood about the relationship between self-compassion and lasting change?
That's a really good question. So, in order for us to make change, it's something out of the norm for us, right? And so, in that process, again, there will be flubs, you will fail. And when you fail, it is not a failure of yourself. This is just part of the change process, which means you are evolving and it's always painful. And that's where the self compassion comes in to understand that this is just part of the journey and it's not something that's in the way. So I think if you're able to kind of draw that connection, that will help you get you closer to your goal rather than like, oh, I can't believe I failed again. I'm just bad at this. No, this is part of the process. You are learning about your weaker points and how we can get stronger and strengthen it so that you don't keep falling through that same hole.
I love that. I love that. Embracing evolution
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
the journey itself.
Yes.
That's so good. So, Dr. Regasa, where can we find you?
Oh, yes.
Where are you? Where are you?
Mostly on Instagram. I'm an oldie, apparently. Everyone's on TikTok, and I've done the TikTok thing, but anyway, I'm on Instagram. And
What's your handle?
my handle is Cali Wellness Doc.
Okay.
So Cali like California, Cali Wellness, and then DOC. So Cali Wellness Doc, and that's my handle. I also have a Substack where I try to publish recipes that are easy for people to follow. Those are my two main social things that I got going on. Oh, and also you can find me on my website too, CaliWellnessDPC.com. This is where you're going to find information about my clinic. So if you are in California, I am licensed here. And if you're looking for a doc to take care of you who will listen to you and understand you, I'm here for you.
I love that. I love that. I thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. And I've been so excited about this, and I'm just so glad to have you here, just sharing your perspective and all the wisdom that you've gained throughout your practice. And I wish you all the best with the clinic and everything. I'm so excited, and I can't wait for your next keynote.
Oh, girl. Send out all those good vibes out.
That's right. Thanks so much.